Join Chris and Suzanne Vester today on Faith, Family, Fulfillment as they lead discussions on creating a strong bond and having a loving relationship through Christian values. Guests on the show share insightful stories and ideas to enhance a positive family upbringing and create trust in one another, as well as providing encouraging words of wisdom everyone should hear. And now, here are Chris and Suzanne.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Faith, Family, and Fulfillment. I'm your co-host, Chris.
And I'm Suzanne.
And it's holiday season, so we're going to talk about holiday traditions and holiday compromises. Probably is one of the better terms to go along with this conversation. I'll pray us in and we'll get started.
All right.
Lord, thank you, as always, for this time that we can sit down and have some conversation where we will be discussing how you play a part in this season of our life, and how we keep you at the center during the season, during Thanksgiving and Christmas, because they're both really to celebrate you. We ask that you lead us and guide us in this conversation so that the message that's heard that gives you the glory in the story is the message that's conveyed. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
So, holiday traditions. We have been married a long time at this point, been together even longer. Thank goodness. I guess, can you be married and not together? I guess that's a thing.
That's probably a topic for the other day.
So, but you're from one part of the state, and I am from another part of the state. And
opposite parts might be important to know.
Way opposite, 300 miles apart. Mm-hmm. We met in college, and then we are now currently residing, as the crow flies, about 2 miles from where I spent my childhood. Mm-hmm. So I'll say it's my part of the state.
It's your backyard.
My backyard. And one of the conversations that we really never had coming into marriage was, what do the holidays look like? Mm-hmm. I was the guy who assumed that it would just be, well, it's my house, so we're going to do it my way. And
on my end of the state.
At my end of the state. Mm. And your parents have been gracious enough. I joked with you before we got started about letting me borrow you for all these years through the holiday seasons, because I know it's been a sacrifice on your part. Because I don't think we've
never spent a Thanksgiving or Christmas with my parents on Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Right.
We've always done something, but it's always been away from the actual day, which we can talk about why that's thing or not. We've always had my family. My mom's an only child, so that made it very simple. But she had a lot of cousins that were very close, both in relation and proximity. So we always had like 5 Christmases when we had Christmas. Because everybody, my grandmother's side of her family would gather at a certain time, and then my grandfather's, siblings and children and grandchildren would gather at a certain time. And my dad's parents passed away when I was relatively young. My grandfather passed away when I was 8, and my grandmother's one passed away when my dad was in high school, and then his second wife passed away before he did. I don't remember exactly the timing of it, but my great grandparents on both sides were with us for quite a while. So we had it was a lot. And so it was always kind of a thing where there was a great deal of flexibility, because you never knew who was going to be getting together with who and when. I mean, there was the second Sunday of December was kind of different, to a certain, group, but there was always a lot of flexibility. We always did Christmas Eve with my grandma and grandpa that lived essentially next door, my mom's parents. And then while my great-grandparents were living, we would go over there on Christmas Day around lunchtime. Very, very short visits, but they were literally my next door neighbors. So very close. But there was never anything super rigid or set in stone, which you're probably really lucky, because, had there been something really rigid and set in stone,
I'd have been the one compromising. Right?
It would have been kind of a thing.
Right. And on our end of the state, my family, my mom is one of 3 She had three brothers. She's got two still here. She lost one of her brothers when he was in his 30s, in the 70s. So, but all of the grandchildren, I'll call them the grandchildren, my generation, there's
a lot of people.
There's a lot of us. And we had and we lived in proximity, same thing. We were like right next door to my mother's parents. And so Christmas morning, like we had breakfast. Like it was quick. We didn't even get to play with toys. Like you got up, you saw what Santa brought, and you got dressed and you went to grandma's house. Mm-hmm. And but a very steeped in tradition on that side. And then on my dad's side, we always went to his parents on Christmas Eve night. And it was 100% tradition. Like it was every single time, because my dad's, he's got an older sister. She has an only child. And then it's my sister and I. So it was small family to arrange or to plan for. And so that was just kind of always the thing. It was Christmas Eve on Grandma and Granddaddy Vester's side and Christmas morning on my mother's side. So when my idea is bringing somebody into the family, like their last name is the same as mine. So we're going to do things
when you're home.
Right. You're going to do things my way. But the point of that is, I guess some of it revolves around who has the most steeped in tradition, like who is, like you said, set in stone, and how do you navigate those? I guess the point I was trying to make is that we never discussed it.
No, but we have discussed it. I think we discussed it on what we wish we had known before we got married. And that was one of the things that I brought up was, talk about expectations around those kinds of things early and often.
Right. Because I would say that I'm sure that the people that are listening are like, what a jerk. Like he's never let his wife do Christmas with her family. But we have talked about it since. And with the tradition now is now another generation deep. Mm-hmm. Because our kids have this thing, like we go to, now it's their grandma and granddaddy Vester's house on Christmas Eve. And, we do church service on Christmas Eve. And then Christmas Day is kind of become ours. Like it's just ours, meaning inside our house. So, and then my mom's side of the family, now we're gathering because again, there's great grandchildren the Saturday after Christmas. And we do that at my end of the state.
Yes, you do.
So,
but I think a point that needs to be made is that it's never been a point of contention. I mean, I don't think we've ever had like harsh words about it.
I don't think so.
And my parents, like we've mentioned before, my grandmother passed away this past February. So, my parents had something tethering them a little bit more firmly to their space for a number of years because my mom was the caregiver. But prior to my grandmother needing that much care, they were down here quite frequently, quite a bit. And I feel like they probably will be moving forward because they have a little bit more flexibility and autonomy with that. But like my brother and his wife were living mid-state. So they were in the middle for a time because it took about as long for us to get to their place as my parents to get to their place. And now they're living the same amount of time away from my parents farther west than we are east. So, it's we're quite a bit more scattered than your family.
This is true. Yeah. Because that's a good point too. Because like, Stephanie and we all live on the same piece of property.
Yeah. We see each other's houses every day.
Yeah. And then, and even extended, like the majority of, I'll say the grandkids, I think the one that lives the furthest away is 2 hours, but everybody else is within 15, 20 minutes of.
Or, not much farther.
Yeah.
Not much farther.
Not far. So that's a great point. Yeah. Cause we had discussed it just this past week about gathering for Christmas this year and how does that look and when's it going to be? And you got business Christmas parties and all kinds of stuff surrounding it and travel.
Right.
And that's kind of what made me think about, like, maybe we need to talk about that. How do we navigate the holiday season? Because if you think about, there's enough to take away from what the season's about.
Yes.
already.
Yes.
The hustle, the bustle, the shopping, the giving,
the
commercial side of it, the commercials and the commercial side of it. And I think, if we keep the focus on what it's supposed to be on, and then, knowing that's the focus, how do we navigate our life around that focus?
That's a good question. And actually, it's a question that came up during one of the virtual coffee dates that I do online.
Cool.
About 2 weeks ago, I think it was, how do I navigate the holidays with everything I have going on with people that's the only time I see, and they're demanding my time, that I don't really have a lot to give. And I think the answer that I gave that individual is probably the same answer that you're probably looking for, is you have to decide, like, what's important to me, and what do I want, and what traditions do I really truly enjoy, and what are traditions that we just do kind of by habit. We have to decide that first, I think. And then, what do I have space for, and who do I want to spend the time with? Because, this is going to sound really harsh, but if you have a contentious family relationship and you don't want to spend time with those people because you're going to leave feeling 100% worse than when you showed up, maybe you guys just need to meet and have a cup of coffee rather than having a big family event.
Right. And the thing about the cup of coffee is it could lead to a less contentious family gathering.
Exactly. That's my point.
Right. Is, getting that small conflict getting that under you, so that when you do gather as a family, there's less conflict because it's been handled. Yeah. Like we talked about last week, conflict. But I think for us the church service on Christmas Eve, it's like, that's become a thing that's evolved outside of just our immediate family. Stephanie and Jonathan go, and our kids, because we go to the same church. Mom and dad don't go to the same church as us, but that's become something they participate. Like they come on Christmas Eve. So I think that's it's you see how the traditions ebb and flow, and sometimes they flow downward from generations above. But in that situation, it's Stephanie and I's generation that are pulling our parents into that tradition for us in a good way. We gather for Thanksgiving as well. We've been doing that for 12 years, 13 years. So
we started doing that the same year we all moved, which was 2008.
Right.
So we're going
14 years.
This will be our 15th
year
event, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. With very few exceptions. I mean, we've had to adjust it. It hasn't always been a trip to the mountains to gather Christmas trees.
Always been.
But we've always gathered it at Thanksgiving and doing Thanksgiving together. And one of the traditions my mom started there was for everybody to do the what are they thankful for this year.
I have a twist on that for this year. I'm not going to tell you what.
Which, speaking of twist, one of the things she did that was interesting, that it was really kind of neat to see how everybody knew everybody's personality and what they would value. Is we all wrote down what we were thankful for, and we put it in a bucket, or a little bowl, and we drew it out and read it. And then we had to guess who it was. And almost, I think just about everybody guessed exactly who it was. Right. And it wasn't by handwriting. I think it was really by sentiment, what that person was thankful for, and how well our family knows one another, which is, like Stephanie and I talked about it, it's a rarity, that we spend as much time together as we do, and nobody's like, I'm going to date us, but there's not been a JR shooting yet. Right? That's a terrible comparison on Dallas.
That is a terrible comparison.
So it's 95% of the audience just goes, who is he talking about? But if you're above the age of 45, you'll know Dallas.
I get the Dallas reference, but I have no idea what you're talking about with the shooting, and we're not that far apart.
You need to watch TV. But yes, but we know each other real well. So having those type of traditions that as you evolve, you can keep adding things in and keep the kids steeped in family, as well as steeped in what the season's for. We never I can honestly say never go through either one of those two seasons and holidays. I mean, it's a daily thing, period, but especially during those days where there's a focus and the intention of those days is to celebrate. You know, for me, Thanksgiving is what I'm thankful for the most, is the best gift that I've been given, and that's grace and salvation. So we kind of keep that at the center of Thanksgiving, and then Christmas obviously is the birth of Jesus, but keeping those at the center maybe makes it easier to decide, hey, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a fair statement.
Because I think that's helped us navigate the last 5 or 6 years, especially, I think.
Yeah, it's been more of a challenge since we had, one go off to college, and then we've got another one off to college now. And it just makes it a little bit more delicate because you have to navigate a lot more things.
Right.
Not necessarily more people, but just things.
Right.
I think we were looking at the calendar the other day trying to figure out exactly how many days in December all of us were going to be in the house.
Right.
Because we're all going to be here, there, and a little bit of everywhere for a minute.
Not as bad as November. But
no.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. But it's a lot going on, but thankfully a lot going on. So looking back, you said have the conversations often and early, right? Just how are you going to navigate through the holiday season? And my recommendation is, yes, have the conversations early and often, and then make sure that when you're looking at activities, those activities are celebratory of the reason.
Yes, I agree.
I think it takes so much stress off of those situations when it's not so much about the hustle and bustle of buying and covering the bases of gifting.
True. And I think it's important too to understand that when you are newly married, you are trying to find your own footing as a family, because even though there may just be two of you, that's still your family unit. And I think it's important to be mindful and respectful of your parents' wants and wishes, but not to let them dictate what you actually end up doing, because you're trying to find your footing as your family, not to carbon copy your family of origin.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because the conversation that we've had on here before is, biblically speaking, like it's your first priority is God, and right. Second would be your spouse, third your children, and then how it plays out after that is extended family, in the hierarchy of things. So the idea of, like it says in the Bible, of cleaving to your wife, that's making her the first priority, on the planet. And so I think that probably could be where things could go south, is if you're not honoring that part of it.
Or if your family of origin has expectations that they're projecting onto you that you might honestly not want to be a part of.
Right.
So I think communication in that regard is critically important. If, for example, and my mom is not going to ever throw a huge party and, go all out and cook all day. And that's just not my mom. She is incredible at things. That is not something she would enjoy.
Right.
And will not partake in. But, sometimes you have, families who do, go all out and have these, big things where they literally do cook all day and that sort of thing. And if the expectation is, well, it doesn't matter what your schedule is, this is what we're doing and you should be there, but you already have something going on with your spouse, with your family. There was no communication there. There was just an expectation placed. So I think it's important to kind of clear the air on those.
Yeah, right. For sure. Every time. Every time.
Every
Any more wise words?
I don't know that I have wise words. Are we going to share some of our things that we do?
Oh, well,
that we become the Griswolds at Christmas and have the far too tall Christmas tree in our den.
So we do in our home.
You want to tell the story that happened last year?
Tradition-wise, which one are they falling over?
Yeah.
So I like really.
But you have. Let me interrupt for a second. You have to preface it with what I asked you about as we were putting the tree in the stand and putting it in the den.
I don't remember. You'd have to remind me. I'm sure it's about something about it falling over.
It was.
So I like really, really tall Christmas trees
that are also fat. So
they
take
end
half
up
the day.
they end up being fat because they're tall.
Define tall for those who are listening.
The tallest one was about 14 and a half feet.
Yes.
Which
I'm 5'4" and I'm the one decorating it. Let me give you some perspective.
So that's a lot. And I recognize it's a lot. But it's beautiful when you're done.
It is pretty.
And
it's very pretty.
And I'm very appreciative of how the house smells and looks and all of that during the Christmas season. But yes, I like my mother, right? You talk about traditions. My mom's, one of her favorite holidays is Christmas because she's a giver. Like she's giving gifts is definitely
her passion.
And she is like, thankfully, such a gift giver. And so she loves Christmas. And so Christmas has always been big. So I love Christmas. You know, probably, I don't know that it's definitely not about receiving. You know, I feel weird receiving gifts actually. So for me, it's just tradition of the decorating, the trees, the lights, for years and years and years when the weather was correct and timing allowed, we had 22,000 lights on the outside of our house. So it did kind of look like the Griswolds.
A little bit more tasteful because they were at least all white.
Yeah, they were all white and they didn't dance around.
They did not dance.
But we have 8 Christmas trees inside the house that are all themed to a degree. So we like decorating for Christmas. And yes, last year, our tree, which was only about 11 foot last year.
Oh, it was big.
I
didn't
think it was that tall.
At least 13 feet.
And they grow. Like we bring them home from the mountains, and I think they're done growing. And by the time we get them home, they are at least another foot taller. Because they don't look that big on the mountain. But yeah, so it fell over in the mountain.
It was decorated.
Fully decorated and full of water.
It was.
It fell over. And so we ended up literally having to, I don't know another word, but hog tie it.
Strap it.
We literally strapped it to a door so that it wouldn't fall over anymore. That daggone thing weighed about 250 pounds. And
it was very heavy.
And it was a mess.
Yeah. The comment that I made to you when we were putting it in the house and we pulled the strings off, the netting.
When the strings busted off. Yeah.
Well, yeah, when they came off. Yeah. When they were no longer there. Right. I asked you, do we need to secure that to the door in some way? Like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And 3 days later.
Yeah.
They broke 2 lamps and
oh, that's right. I forgot it broke a lamp. Man, that stinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a mess.
It was a big mess.
So from now on,
it's a funny story.
Maybe we should just immediately, like every time,
lash it to
the door. Yeah. But yeah, that's a big tradition for us. And just fully decorating the house. Like it makes me feel home.
Yeah.
I love it. So
it is quite a thing.
But yeah, that Christmas tree cutting and bringing it home. And I don't cut it, but we ask them to cut it.
We do pick it out.
We do pick it out. The whole family gets to pick it out. And
we have pictures of every year.
Every single year.
It started out with 2 kids, and then the next year we had another one. Yeah. So it went from 4 to 5.
In fact, I think Shelly was conceived on that Christmas trip.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a little TMI.
Yeah. But we've talked about it on here with, especially after the past week's episode of the testicular cancer, she's really the one that we put the most thought into. The conception.
Please
back to Christmas stuff. Yeah. So then we have pictures, which is amazing, which is kind of cool to go back and look at and watch everybody grow and see it come to life.
Yeah.
So yeah. Back to how do you navigate conversation?
Clear communication.
What
do you love? What traditions do you love? And it wouldn't be the holidays without them. Which ones do you not love as much and they take up a lot of time? Just kind of chart your own path if you need to.
Right. I think that's wise.
Control what you can control. Keep your stress level as low as possible and sleep.
Right. And then keep the reason for the season serious. I know it's so cliche, but I think that's the biggest stress reliever if you know it's not about the food and it's not about the presents and it's not about that, and gathering as a family, celebrating the gift that we've been given and becoming eternally grateful. Like, it's just that easy.
Right.
And we make so much of it. But I do love the gathering.
Yes.
And I do love the food.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do. Food coma coming.
For sure.
Yeah.
So this one will drop on Thanksgiving.
On Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It sure will. This will be our Thanksgiving episode.
It will be.
So with that in mind, what are you the most grateful for this year?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Opportunities. Because we've had a lot of really cool opportunities come our way since last year this time.
Yeah, we have, for sure.
Not just by chance opportunities, like opportunities that are going to be just uncalculably impactful.
Agreed. Yeah.
In years.
Just trying to think. I mean, because that's a good one. I think clarity. There's been a lot of things this year that have provided a lot of clarity for me, you, us, the family, extended family, work. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's still some clouds, but I mean, there's just so much more clarity.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm thankful for clarity. Yeah.
Fair.
Cool. Well, we hope everybody has an amazing Thanksgiving. We're thankful for you. Thankful for how the book performed. Had a really good drop. For those of you that haven't seen it, it's available on Amazon. You can actually look it up by the same title as the podcast.
It's available on Kindle and in print.
Yep.
So you can have immediate access, or you can have a hold in your hands paper copy within a few days. Right.
And if you find value in the book, we just ask that you share the book. There's an easy way on the back. There's a QR code you could send somebody so that they can see what you're talking about. So for all those out there, we appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, and we're grateful that we get to do this every week.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And praise out.
Sure. Father God, as we come into this season of the year when we really should be even more mindful and focused on all of the many blessings and all of the many ways that you show up for us, help us to actually put that into action every single day by showing gratitude and appreciation to everyone that we are around and for all the things that they are doing for us, and help us to really be a light that shines, because this is a tough time of year for a lot of people. So help everyone find their path and find their clarity and be able to really walk in the true joy that comes with the rest of the events and the seasons of the year. We ask that you would just help those who are hurting to find hope and help us to continue doing everything that will bring you glory. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Faith, Family, Fulfillment, brought to you by Chris and Suzanne Vester. We hope you enjoyed listening to this week's guests and stories. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Chris and Suzanne on Instagram at HVAUTOCOO and Suzanne.c.vester. That's at SUZANNE.c.vester.